A little after the top of the hour. So welcome to the virtual production night at Silicon Valley Video. I'm Marty Porter. I've been putting these virtual meetings together for a couple of years. And before that, we were doing it in person. And we're hoping and praying we can get back in person again sometime later this year. But certainly we're planning a big event in early 2023. So everything is as a go. We've been doing these nights at courtesy of the support of two important companies to us, the studio B&H and ASG, and we thank them for their ongoing support of these meetings. We thank all of you for coming tonight because it is going to be a good night. This is a topic that really is baking my noodle and I think getting a lot of people curious about what's coming down the pike. We're hearing so much about it down in Hollywood, but what does it mean? What does virtual production mean to the corporate world? And is this only for big budget Hollywood, or is it going to have ongoing impact on all forms of production? We're going to find out tonight, and we have an amazing panel that that Michel, Suissa from B&H, and Erik Weaver, dear friend from ETC at USC, is put together, and we thank them all. So let me just do some quick introductions. You'll get to hear from them all tonight. Erik Weaver is here. He's head of virtual and adaptive production at ETC at USC. He's brought a friend, Jay Spriggs, co-founder and CTO of Voluminous Studios, and he's got a lot of interesting projects that he's been doing up in the Bay Area. So we're going to hear about those tonight. And AJ Wedding, co-founder of Orbital Studios, is here, a good friend of Michel's. And Eric brought along Kurd Zechmeister, DP and senior manager of AWS Media Services. And we're interested in hearing what Kurd has to add tonight. And final introduction, we've got Addy Ghani, VP of Virtual Production from Disguise. And you all know Disguise. If you don't know Disguise, check out some of the stuff they've been doing in sports. Pretty amazing. But he's got some interesting things to add. So with that said, just a quick plug for our SVG Sports OTT Summit. These events are an initiative of SVG, and eventually it'll be its own community like SVG. But everybody who attends these events should be aware of what's going on in Sports OT, and we have this event next week. So please join us. One other quick thing before we get to the program, and I'm moving fast. Zoom tips: mute your microphone, please. Select speaker view, not gallery. And we usually get a lot of questions, and we encourage your questions. So please ask the questions, but do it in the chat and wait to be called on by me, the moderator, or if we don't have time, I'll probably ask myself. So please, let's make this interactive. Let's have some fun. And with that said, we got Dave Van Hoy. Welcome, Dave. How are you from ASG? I hear you're doing some amazing things in this space too. So thanks for joining as well. So with that, in my rapid fire New Yorkese voice, I want to pass it over to the Frenchman himself, Michel Suissa, managing director of the studio at B&H. He'll do some introduction and he'll get this program moving. And thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, Marty. It's good to be back. Just like you said, hopefully the next one will be in person. I think we've had a little bit of an example of how in person can be at HPA recently in Palm Springs, and I think it was terrific. I think the turnout was incredible. I think the mood was also really sort of, very engaging. I think people are really happy to have a chance to see their friends and their partners in the industry. So that being said, why virtual production? I think virtual production is on everyone's lips. I think it's pretty clear that it's taken the business by storm. And just like Marty said, not just the entertainment business, but pretty much every vertical, in the marketplace that has a need for a certain amount of content that fits the profile of virtual production is really interested in sort of diving into a new generation of content creation. So why B&H? Why we involved with virtual production? For a number of reasons. So one, because it's fucking cool, pardon my language. And number two, it's also because that's where all our friends are at. And if you you're only as good as the company you keep. So, if you have good people around you, then you do good work. So that's what we try to do. I had terrific history with AJ. Erik and I just recently collaborated, at HBA, very, very successful venture. Addy and I have known each other for, I don't know, like 6-7 years at least, number of projects. And I think it's evolved into something entirely different. So the reason why virtual productions are very interesting is because I think it's a new horizon. I think we've only explored, I think, the surface of what can be done with this medium. The technology is evolving. It is relatively complex, so you have to have knowledge. You have to be educated to know about how to put it together. I think that's clear. Erik agrees with me, I am sure. And it is really important to understand how it functions, because it could serve your project, it could serve your marketing, it could serve any kind of content creation that you need to distribute to your audience. It's extremely immersive, it's extremely interactive. I think there are new approaches, and I think Erik can also talk about a project that I was fascinated to hear about at HBA, which is Fathead. I think the combination of so many technologies in our project really is fascinating. So maybe if you can chat about that a little bit, I think that might be interesting to a lot of people. So with AJ, AJ and I go back, 18 months? We started, I didn't start Orbital. I was just happy you picked me to help you out. So, it's been a terrific ride. I think the work that you guys have done is absolutely outstanding. You're getting a lot of press, good press, not just press, but I think people are very impressed with your work. And I think with Addy and I, again, it started to your days back at Verizon, and Riot Films, and we visited you, and we were helping you putting together some pretty advanced technology, and it's evolved from you now being totally immersed and with this guys in virtual production. So I think that's enough for me talking. I think I'm gonna pass the baton to Erik. Erik has some pretty cool stuff to talk to us about, and also a cooler presentation. So Erik, take it away.
So thank you so much. And again, I know a bunch of these people as well. I still remember AJ reaching out to me. I've got some panels in the garage. So and now he's so busy that I can't get on there. So yeah, I think there's a lot of very important points he said there. Virtual production is actually a series of different components. So we naturally look at it and think of Mandalorian, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But when you look at virtual production is looking to be $4.7 billion by 2028, according to SMPTE, or the Society of Motion Picture Technical Engineers. Epic recently did a statement that said that it's gone from about 15 stages in 2019, 2020 to about 250 stages today in 2022. So what you're seeing is explosive growth here in this particular field. And so what most people know about virtual production is this whole idea of doing it Mando style or Mandalorian. And Mandalorian basically took these ginormous stages that are upwards of, say, 26 feet tall and 280 degrees around, with even barn doors that will close on some of these environments. Actually, the ILM owns 5 stages now with over 100 people working for them. The Mandalorian stage is actually 90 by 65 feet in size. I was just on a call yesterday with ILM and Rob Vidro talking about some of that stuff. But that's not the end all be all. This is one aspect of what's going on. One of the most common things that people right now are spotting or seeing is more of this kind of stuff, this car plates. When you look at a lot of these car commercials nowadays, so you're looking most likely at a stage in the background, playing a plate. Or stitched together photography, basically, that's moving in real time. And so Addy here on the call works for a company called Disguise. Disguise is pretty much, I would say, the premier company that does this kind of playback. I can't actually think of another company that's anywhere near as profound. But there's really two ways to create content in general. And that two ways are either going to be you create it from scratch in Unreal, or you're going to basically shoot it and stitch it together. So in our world, you kind of got these two dichotomies of this grayscale, this ginormous stage on one side, and the car plates, or if you know a company called Stargate, they would actually go down and buy 4K panels from Costco and put them behind the windows of these cars and map them. So you got quite this innovative approach to this multi-million dollar experience. So there's quite a bit of breadth, and what you're going to find in corporate video is there's actually a medium here, or there's a lot of work in between that's going to be defined and evolved that can be done. And so I'm going to actually show you a really fun shoot that we did with AWS, and this isn't Kurt's project, but it is another project there that I did with them for the keynote at SIGGRAPH.
Amazon Web Services has been working closely with studios and partners in the media and entertainment industry, working backwards from their needs with the goal of helping content production professionals scale while focusing more on their creativity and the product they want to create. At SIGGRAPH 2021, which was virtual once again, we wanted to demonstrate the different ways that the cloud has been able to help customers that are focused on content production. But given how many virtual presentations everyone has watched lately, we didn't want this to be just another slide presentation with a talking head. As it turned out, our customers and partners had made a lot of progress in unlocking virtual production technologies and techniques, so a unique opportunity presented itself. About 4 weeks ahead of SIGGRAPH, we reached out to ICVR, a leader in the virtual production space. We also enlisted the help of Erik Weaver as our executive producer, who brought his knowledge and experience with filming content on LED volumes to the project.
Efficiency and speed of production were key. It was a real test of our pipeline, and we had to pull out all the stops. Rapid iteration and quick response to feedback were critical, from block out of the scene to previs, final art, and even making last-minute changes on set. AWS Cloud Services allowed ICVR to have a true 24-hour production cycle, with team members working together from all around the world having instant access to the project.
If you want to do something unique and really challenging, something like a multicam really did push the boundaries. And that was really a great opportunity to see what we could do to continue to tell the story. One of the limitations that originally kind of hinders virtual production is when you're simply taking one camera shot, and that becomes boring to an audience. That becomes almost Zoom-like. So you really have to explore beyond that. This particular in-camera VFX aspects is going to grow or become an actual mainline stay of the industry.
One of the things we wanted to do in this keynote was to give a nod to the history of computer graphics. There have been so many exciting moments in computer graphics, and moments where everyone knew that something had just fundamentally changed what can be achieved. With the project timeline and budget in mind, we needed to focus our efforts on just one full fidelity virtual scene. So the computer graphics history segment evolved into the moody opening monologue of the keynote with backgrounds that changed to help represent different time periods. The idea of creating a park for our environment emerged because Amazon Nimble Studio, a new service that launched a few months prior, actually began with a conversation in a park in Mountain View, California, when the founders of Nimble Collective got together to talk about what they wanted to build. And of course, we intended to include a segment of Nimble Studio, so it felt like a great way to set the stage. Also, who doesn't like being outside in the park?
And putting together.
So I just wanted to kind of give you
a lot of challenges that we had to
Ghani,
figure out.
keeps going.
Number one is just the fact that when we started on this, SIGGRAPH was only 4 weeks away.
So what I want to just kind of actually show you with that whole piece there was some of the technology that's being executed. This particular event was a keynote. Of course, obviously, I showed you earlier that there's a lot of different types of commercials and commercial work, but they were trying to spruce up what they were doing. And one of the best comments I got from somebody at AWS is the first 20 minutes of watching the video, they were trying to figure out which park in LA this was shot at. And that was really a like, yes, kind of moment there. So a lot of fun prepping and making some of that stuff. Michel was talking about how we worked on a project recently. So we do work where we look at these big problems, and I work for a think tank and I report up to the CTOs of these organizations. And they had come up with this idea of what is virtual production. So we ended up doing a project called Ripple Effect, which ended up producing a 150-page white paper on how do you execute on these particular shows. And you can find that white paper on rippleeffectfilm.com. And we then have moved on to a new production called Fathead, and it's a much more elaborate production. And we have over 100 interviews in the can on how this is accomplished. So we're producing a huge amount of materials that is open to the public for anybody to watch and see and learn more about. And Michel was awesome, helped us with some lensing and stuff. So there's a lot of things that are very nuanced and important in that, like lens metadata and working with the screens. So I don't want to go on talking too long here today. I'd kind of like to bring a couple of the people around that have been working in the field to give some of their experience. And Michel, do you want to introduce them, or do you want me to introduce some of these folks? I'll let you choose.
I'll jump in for a sec to introduce my good friend AJ. I think I like our story simply because he got me excited, and then once he got me excited, he can get rid of me. So and it was about 18 months ago, something like that. AJ, right? You approached me and you said, I have a project. It's going to be a virtual production all the way. I have great partners, and I need one more partner to actually put a proof of concept together to make sure that, you know, we have something to show to our customers, and then grow from that experience to put something together that is commercially viable, that is also a great showcase, you know, for the industry at large, and also an eye opener for what can actually be done, you know, in a pretty sophisticated environment with great results, you know, that bring in-camera VFX with photorealism, with computer graphics integration. So all the worlds, you know, combined into one, you know, and I was sold, you know, and, you know, I lent, you know, a lot of gear that ended up resulting in a great venture for AJ and I, and we're very proud to have contributed somehow to the success of Orbital. But I think truly the concept behind you know, the realization of what AJ wanted to do is really for him to talk about. You know, he had the vision, and his vision was so clear and so precise that I think now people realize that, you know, this is a tremendous roadmap to success. And just like Eric said, you know, you can't get a hold of AJ. I'm lucky that I'm one of the guys who can actually call him and he'll pick up the phone. So, but you know, enough of that said, I think AJ, you should tell us about Orbital, how you started, you know, with Funko Studios, and then now you're in a new space, you know, and it's expanding, and the quality of the work is exceptional. So it's your floor.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, much like Eric said, you know, what they're trying to do as far as, you know, furthering virtual production and making it more available and allowing people to learn about it, you know, that was really where I started. I mean, when I first saw it, I thought, this is the future and I have to be a part of it. And had plenty of, you know, 20 years experience in production and visual effects. And so I thought it's kind of the perfect mix, right? Because very rarely does a visual effects person talk to a production person and speak the same language. So I thought I'd be a good sort of crossover for that. And we really did look out having partners like B&H and Michel and Planar especially as well, because you know, that first iteration of Orbital Studios was you know, very much on a shoestring. And what we were trying to do was I don't know how we thought we could do this, but we thought, well, we're going to fix some of the problems that we've heard about on Mandalorian. We want to fix the things that they weren't able to do. We wanted to make things better. And the great thing about the partners that we had was that they were interested in that as well. So we have a great partner in Planar, like I mentioned, where we would tell them the things that we need to change about the screens. And, you know, their team would get together and figure it out and make those changes. And when we first started at Funko, that was sort of our first version of, hey, this is something we kind of worked on together. And now that we have our headquarters in our 36,000 square foot studio space downtown, we have two massive LED volumes, one still being built. And we have a lot of screens out on the road doing other shows. We did the FX series Snowfall, and I'm actually in Chicago right now. We're setting up for another FX series called Justified City Primeval. It's interesting, one of the things Erik mentioned is, that it's not just this or that, right? It's not just Mandalorian, or car process. And that's kind of the thing that we've been really pushing as well, using a lot of these manufacturers to create better technology and then go to the producers and say, look, you don't have to fully commit to a Mandalorian type schedule. We can give you sort of the 0.5 version, right? If we're doing, video plates outside your windows, or even, we call 2.5D tracking outside the window, very simple stuff that doesn't require a lot of lead time and doesn't put all your post-production into pre-production. You still get all that production value on camera. And I do have to say, it's very interesting when you bring in DPs and production designers who've never worked with it before, and it's terrifying to them. I remember the first day on set of Snowfall, and the DP put the camera as far away as he possibly could from the window where we had the LED wall. And just little by little, he kept inching closer and closer. And by the end of the season, the DPs and I were the best friends. And they're asking, what else can we do? What else can we do? So now we're doing all these full virtual sets that we're going to do for next season. And, I think that's the thing, like you said, Erik, is the education of it. They've really got to get used to it. And so this sort of other application that's kind of a mid-ground is something that we've been pretty focused on while we're building our studios, which is taking way too long. And sorry that I can't get you in there any sooner than June. I actually have a couple of things I'd love to show if you guys are cool with that. So if I can just share screen really quickly. Apologies for my desktop. So for instance, this is the main set for FX series Snowfall. It's a penthouse. And basically we built this 60-foot by 15-foot LED wall out the window. Oh, sorry, that's at our studio. That's how we watched the Super Bowl, by the way. That was a lot of fun. So this is the wall from another angle. So you can see it's essentially just a flat wall, and we went out and we shot video plates and erased buildings that weren't from the period, and we made lots of pretty different skies that they could use. And that was a fun way for them to kind of get into it. Now what we're trying to do is push even further. So this is something we actually shot yesterday, right before I hopped on a plane. The idea of this was to say, all right, how much can we use this LED wall as a 3D space? And really just not even have any kind of sets, and just see, can we get close enough? That was one of the things that we changed with what we were doing with Planar was, getting really tight pixel pitches so that we can do things that that you couldn't do on a Mandalorian stage where you've got to stay 16 feet away from the wall. So that's a quick look at that shot. And then you can see here's the behind the scenes of it. So one thing we're doing here that's pretty crazy is we're tracking an Airy Trinity rig, which might be the first time it's been done, which is exciting for us. And he's roughly 3 feet from the wall. And you can see, the calculations that are happening on the wall in camera look perfect, but of course to your eye, they look very strange. So these are some of the things that we are constantly testing. Whenever I hear a visual effects supervisor or someone tell me what you can't do with this technology, it's the first thing I'm going to go do. I'm going to figure out why they say that. And so far we've been able to get over most of those challenges. There's still a few we're working on, and with the help of Michel and B&H, demanding that these brands build us the things we're asking for. And, little by little, I keep bugging them to get things faster, but, that's, I'm sure he gets that a lot.
So I'm going to bring Addy a little bit into the conversation simply because, just like Erik said, they are a market leader, in everything that's content creation, for originally I was going to say live events, right?
That's right. Yeah.
It was really the sort of the major portion, the core component of your business model was live events, and then of course live events with LED walls, of course, all over the place, concerts, and then all these kinds of entertainment ventures, and then it evolved, almost naturally into virtual production, and the technology was already there, it was just a matter of adapting it, and understanding the language of how to use single camera sort of environments that's more cinematic than a traditional live event, and then adapt, the quality of what was actually being presented on the wall, for a photorealism and in-camera VFX. So, I think you can speak to it a lot better than I do. So I'm going to give you the floor.
Definitely, yeah. Michel, I mean, you're absolutely right. Live events have been using disguise technology for almost 2 decades now. And, just stepping a bit further back from that, the LED tile technology has existed for a long time. Camera tracking technology has existed. Unreal, if you talk about all the tech stacks, they've all existed on their own. Virtual production is just really, mashing it all together and making it work for production. And when I hear, AJ say, well, if somebody tells me I can't do it, I'm going to do it. That's exactly the type of clients that we want, because, we're still in such an undefined space. I mean, there's so much that still hasn't been figured out. And as a technology platform, we are adaptive, right? So we don't just make a product and we just release it out there. We're constantly deploying, new feature sets. We're listening to our customers. And so that's what Disguise's sort of motto is. And just to overview what we do, we provide the hardware and the software platform for the LED volume, where you can run Unreal Engine, you can run a video plate, you can even run Unity, you name it. We just make the complex bits simple for you, so you can sort of focus your energy on making the shot and running the production, not debugging EDIDs and wiring and all the stuff that you really don't want to be bothered with.
So actually, speaking of all that complexity, we got a guy that I kind of brought onto the call, Jay Spriggs, and every single time that I wanted to make sure my shoots were going to go seamless and smooth, I made sure Jay was involved. And Jay's had a lot of involvement up with the Valley as well, and working with clients up there for different activities and events. So I have to give a shout out to Jay and maybe let him tell a little bit of his story.
Hello, everyone. I've been doing the virtual production thing for a bit. I'm a production technologist. So when COVID hit, I was actually working with a company called Intrepid Studios on an experiential thing up in for the Tokyo Olympics using disguise boxes. Good shout out for them. They're excellent. And we had to get back to work. So in early 2020, we started a virtual production stage there. And we started producing content for some of the large companies up there. We started with Intel, that was our first client. Then Twilio, VMware, and ultimately Salesforce. We actually ended up building Salesforce, a green screen virtual production stage up in their West Tower. If we're talking about corporate video, there's a lot of potential qualities that you can kind of bring to it. It's not just the fact that you can put your executives and your keynotes and stuff in wherever they want to be. It really is that you can bring it to them. You can put it in their office, utilizing things like set extension. You can actually just have a small stage on a corporate floor and just bring them wherever they want to be in the world. And then I moved back down to LA and I just started trying to Johnny Appleseed the virtual production scene down there. If you had a big pile of LED, I would build you a system. That was XR Studios. I'm sorry, XR Stage, not XR Studio. I could not take credit for that one. XR Studios is also excellent. XR Stage, Sweetwater. I did some stuff with Monolith on a couple of features and just kept on building. And about 6 months ago, I met some partners, and we're starting something called Voluminous Studios, and we're still finishing our first funding round. But the big thing is that education is a very, very important part of this. There aren't enough operators to make this work, and there aren't enough standards really. You kind of have to make it up as you go along every single time, because there's always a gap of education somewhere. And how do we kind of bring this to everyone in an honest way so that they know the pitfalls of it, from the content creation to the engineering to the actual scheduling and shooting, so that we can all kind of build this thing together.
Just going to jump in real quick to give our good friends at SIMT a little shout out for the initiative of RES. I think if anyone's interested in being a contributor, financially, to help the community find some standards, for making education a lot easier, a lot more available, and certainly disseminated through existing crews and upcoming talents that need to be part of the equation here to form the new talent pool that we're going to need as this market develops further. So I would encourage everyone who is interested, as an organization, to sponsor SIMT, to go look to their initiative. We've just very recently became a member and a sponsor, and I think that is in everyone's interest. I'm just going to mention one thing that actually had me sold into virtual production, and it wasn't the Mandalorian. It was just, yes, Mandalorian. Okay, I'm a Star Wars fan, and I know everything, and I have a little Grogu on my desk right here. But that's incidental. The real equation here is, how does it serve the community, for their goals of reaching the audience with the content. And I'm going to give a little shout out to my friend Ben Pack. They created, in their little stage here in New York, they created a little video that was so extraordinarily photoreal, of people having drinks in the terrace of a New York building. And it looks absolutely extraordinary. And, that there was absolutely no way that you could say this was not shot live. And it wasn't, and I think that's really when you see that kind of thing, where the integration of real environments with virtual production is really what sort of sells it. And I think, everyone who's here, who's not necessarily in the pure media and entertainment world, not really a feature film, not really a television series, but other mediums, I think, there's a place for that too. We're working currently on a pretty large project for, guess what? A house of worship. They want to create their own content, for their congregation. And it's the same principle as, how do we make it for real, so that as opposed to going all the way in the desert in the Middle East, and we're going to recreate it, in our studio. So I think, it's everything. It's, the world of possibilities that virtual production is bringing to us, I think is incredible. But again, I want to go back to what everyone said, is we need talent. And to bring talent to the equation, we need resources. So if you find yourself at a crossroads and you say, oh, I would love to have talent, then invest into making sure that the new talent, the new generation of people actually have a way, to learn this new medium. I'm just going to ask a question to the group, just to get the impression on whether, this is a medium to actually continue to grow, or if it has sort of a final sort of set of growth into the marketplace. I think it reaches every vertical. So from what you guys have seen, in your environments, what kind of growth do you see for this market? Do you see replacing it, green screen, blue screen entirely? Do you see taking over on location shooting? What do you see in the future that's actually going to help grow this marketplace?
I I think everyone would probably want to weigh in on this, but maybe, oh, I found the empty lane. It's a tool, right? And what it provides is real-time results. And so if you look at the LED production, that's just another utility. The stuff that I've shot, we normally mix between green screen and final pixel on the LED, depending on the project. As AJ said, the stuff that you shoot out of a window, like you can normally hit final pixel with that with a final grade. But if you have more specific stuff, you end up just recomping that in post. But yeah, it's really the entire stream of it, right? So we start here on the LEDs, but we use a lot for pre-visualization, right? So you can see what you're shooting before you shoot it. We're using a lot for content generation. And as we start looking at these larger and larger compute architectures, NVIDIA just announced the Hopper architecture, right? With this massive SLI bridge. I guess they call it the NVLink now, that allows you to have these massive rendering stacks. The blend between, and then also AWS work as well, the blend between these two worlds becomes closer and closer and tighter, so that you can start providing realistic, real world, virtual worlds at a very responsive timeline. And I think that's the world that we should all prepare for.
Yeah, the bridge back to gaming is actually going to be interesting. And we do see Michael Kaplan on this call. Hi, Michael. Shout out to you real quick. I do really quickly want to introduce Kurd, though, real quick. And could you tell us a little bit about your background and what you are up to over there at AWS?
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. I've never been part of this, so this is an interesting experience, a very interesting dialogue. As I've been listening for the last couple of minutes, I've just go through these really interesting waves of imposter syndrome, because I'm like, I'm a content maker, right? I mean, you guys all have this like really awesome, background in building studios and doing all that really, really cool stuff, right? And I want to correct one thing, because you guys introduced me at the beginning as being media services, which is part of AWS, which came from the Elemental acquisition AWS made a long time ago. My team's actually called Media Series, and we're making content, right? So we are, for all practical senses, I'm kind of like the guy in the trenches trying to use all this technology to actually make compelling content with. And I make hardcore corporate content, right? I make the video that you watch that teaches you how to use the cloud. I make the video where people are speaking about cloud technologies and that kind of stuff, right? So my content that I make together with my team is all focused around that, right? And so for the last year and a half, right, myself and my producer, Andrea Moreland, who is actually on here, and I want to give her a shout out as well. By the way, she's one of the most terrific producers ever. She's also one of the most terrific visual effects producers I've ever had a chance to work with. We've been living this virtual production thing, right? And it's hard. It's getting better, but it's hard. Why did we want to do this, right? Why did I want to do this as a storyteller? I ask myself that question every now and then, like, why did I do this, right? But, the key thing really is that, look, corporate video is boring, right? A lot of times, it's talking heads up against the window and that kind of stuff. And Andrea and I we wanted to infuse energy into our content. We wanted to go into great sets, go into places we couldn't go on our budgets and our stuff. And virtual production enables us to do that, right? I can go into places I couldn't go with my type of content, right? And do that. Now, LED walls is still very expensive. You guys need to make this a little bit cheaper for us, please. That's a huge thing we need to do, right? So we too are in a very hybrid kind of workflow. The content we create a lot of times is immediately multi-camera, right? We typically talk in 3 cameras, 4 cameras or more. And virtual production in multi-camera is still fairly tricky, right? There's lots of things to consider when you work in multi-camera environments. Not only is lighting for multi-camera really hard, it's dealing with elements of CG rendering in the background and everything is complex, but it's getting better, right? So this evolutionary journey, I think, is something as a content maker, so as a filmmaker, right, for me has been really, really cool to see and to do that, right? And Andrea and I have been taking this kind of crawl, walk, run approach into virtual production. I want to say one more thing, and then I'm going to hand it back to you guys, and hopefully I can come in a little bit more with a couple more stories from the trenches. You know, a lot of times when we talk about virtual production, we're really focused on what happens in the studio. We're focused on the wall, we're focused on the green screen, right? We're focused on the camera tracking and all of these things. And in essence, that is virtual production, right? But for us, you know, actual producers of content, right, and storytellers, virtual production starts in pre-production, right? And all the tooling that comes in there and the planning and all of these things, right? And it goes deep into post-production, right? Of how we can do this and how we want to get these workflows together with you and together with the industry enabled so they can run, you know, in an on-set environment, in a cloud environment, in a hybrid environment, and so forth. So all this computational power that's required to run all these things, literally reaching from pre-production where we do previs and modeling in Maya and all of these goodness things, right, all the way out into post-production where we do compositing if it's not in-camera effects, which by the way, I don't do that many in-camera effects quite yet, right? But so there's a lot of compositing still involved in traditional green screen workflows and so forth. So just listening to you guys and to the conversation here, it's been very interesting for me because I have this other view. Yes, I'm AWS, right? I'm part of the cloud business, of course, right? But I'm really a content maker, right? I'm a filmmaker that tries to every day, literally every day, apply this technology into our workflows. So yeah, I mean, I wanted to show some examples, but I think you guys have shown examples where I'm like, whoa, Mandalorian, I want to do that, right? I'm not quite there yet, right? So it's really great. So I think the key realization for me, right, and for my team in the last like year and a half of very intense virtual production workflows is like Erik said at the beginning, it truly is something that's multi-layered, right? Where the technical component pieces of picking the right wall, the right LED environment, the green screen, and how you mix the two of them is intimidating, right? And needs tooling and a lot of understanding on the photography side, on the storytelling side, and how we prepare for that. So yeah, fascinating conversation. I hand it back to you, Erik. But I think I might have a couple more things that can chime in from a workflow perspective.
Well, Michel, you can also share or grab the spotlight here. I'm sure that we have a bunch of wonderful stories along the line and horror stories.
Can somebody tell me a horror story? I'm real. Somebody's got to have a good horror story here.
Oh my!
This is not all, you know, daisies and wonderful. Who's had a meltdown?
I could go. You can DM me and I'll send some. But pretty much everything I've ever been on has been a trash fire at some point. And I'm not like we've always delivered, but oh my god, I've lost a lot of sleep over the last couple.
So besides specifics, let's talk generalities. Is there something that tends to be a particular challenge consistently across all your work? You know, anybody else have any thoughts of where things are hit the road? You know, the rubber hits the road, and where we have to get the technology a little bit more advanced and a little bit more up to snuff.
So I'll give you an example here. I also run a working group that's a bunch of high-ended technical folks from the media and entertainment industry. And what you have is a daisy chain of problems. When you're looking at an LED wall, how that looks to your eye is different than how it looks to a sensor or a scope, looks different to how it looks through a specific camera to a monitor. These are all very different things. And you might have so you have the wall and you have a controller, something like Brompton or whatnot. It's helping put the image there, or Disguise could play a role there, or other things. And some of these systems could also create a daisy chain of problems, like dithering, for example, or other things where the walls, say, for example, and I haven't run into this problem with planar, but I have with other walls, where it's trying to compensate for low black levels or dark levels. And then another system's trying to compensate again, and then another system's trying to compensate. And then you get Unreal into the package, or I don't know, Disguise, but I've worked more with Unreal. And Unreal's then trying to maybe adjust or something. And it's like, okay, we're on this path. Do I have to
be in control?
Yeah. So
no,
very complex if you don't know what you're doing, and you can have a bad experience very easily if you don't bring along someone like a Jay Spriggs, who's fought that out. And I've seen problems. I remember hearing a story once on a stage where it was supposed to be an 8-hour shoot, but the lead architect wasn't there, or the lead controller guy, I think, had COVID or something happened. Well, a person didn't come in till the next morning and they were still shooting, and he flicked one switch and everything started working right.
Yeah.
Right. Like one switch, and they could not figure it out. They were trying and trying.
Amazing. Hey, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, Eric, to your point about the color differences and stuff, Michel was asking, do you think we're close to the end? Do you think absolutely not. I think Alex, who's on this call listening right now, he knows how much I bug him trying to get me a panel with an SSI above 90, and we're going to get there. And I'll help with the algorithm, Alex. Just call me. But beyond that, I also, when Jay was speaking, I was fiddling through my stuff, and I found this document that is going to be a part of an article coming out soon, which talks about the savings that happened on the show that we did. And so I just show you very quickly this document and just the basic numbers here. So this is if they were going to go to a location for this main set, and then what they saved by not going out and staying in their show. And in this case, it was the penthouse that I was showing you. So imagine trying to lug 100 crew up to a penthouse every episode of a show and try to get there at the time of day you're trying to shoot. They saved, $500,000 on that one. And these are some of the other locations where, over the entire course of the series, they saved $1 million. We still made money, but the point being that it's actually a very viable technology, and it doesn't always have to cost you more than everything else. So,
yeah.
And there's a lot of conversations about economic greenness of not traveling and not bringing this whole crew, even though you do have a lot of electricity costs compiled in this, but you can control an environment in a much more confined way.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think I saw a study out of England where they said that the difference between location shooting and staying in the stage and doing virtual production was a 90% savings as far as carbon emissions.
Yeah, we were shooting a Soderbergh feature up in Valencia, and I think we were 12 weeks on principal scheduled, and we ended up doing it in 6 weeks and 6 hours, days. Like, it was absolutely incredible. I've never seen it. We were bored. Like, we were like, what are we doing the rest of the day?
I have seen financials must be pretty compelling. It's a 30 to 50% time savings in resetting and lighting and staging and everything else.
So who's driving this? So, Eric and everybody else. So with those kind of savings, that message is obviously getting up to the financial guys, right? And
slowly.
Are they going to be the big advocates here?
It's music to the ears of producers, is what it is.
Yeah, the producers have to be the ones sharing this with their studios to say, this is why we should be doing this. And that's exactly why this document got written.
Yeah.
The problem is the budgeting is very, very hard. Like, we actually have a course that we're writing right now for virtual production for producers, because essentially you're front loading your entirety of your VFX pipeline. And if you don't leave some on the back end, because you're going to need some on the back end, and you don't plan like you would for the post pipeline, it ends up costing just as much and a lot more headaches, because, there's always roto, and you never want to hear that on set. But if you go in expecting the world of The Mandalorian, where people are putting on VR headsets, running around, finding perfect shots, that is very, very hard to pull off. You need the storyboard. You need to build your sets for shots. You need to look through all this with a fine-tooth comb. You need time for testing, optimization, all that stuff, so that when your talent walks on, it can be quick. But we're constantly 24/7 like optimizing. We're working on content while we're shooting it. We're optimizing on another stage and then sending it over to the main stage, because that's what it takes to actually do this properly. It'll get better, but that's the reality, right?
So another economic breakdown that I've seen is you take your traditional VFX budget, you increase it by 15 to 20%. You take 2/3 of that now and move it up to pre-production, right? And then all of a sudden you're wiping out travel and other expenses. So you're erasing another line item on the show. But overall, your VFX budget does still go up.
And the cool thing is and it's a return on investment, because all those assets are reusable. Like, I would imagine Jay and AJ, they have a library of assets that they could just drop into any shows down the road.
Yeah. It's getting better. Most of the time that stuff is purpose built. AJ, I love what you're doing because we should be actually working in plates a lot more often. Not everything is an Unreal thing. I love Unreal. I've done a lot of shoots on Unreal. There were some times I was doing shoots in Unreal where I was like, I would just wish that we had taken a 360 shot
I
of
think,
this,
yeah,
please. We're not even moving the camera. Oh God.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Hey,
entirely
listen,
true.
guys,
I
I'd
think.
like to bring, I've been trying to get Dave Van Hoy, a good friend of ours who's doing a lot of work here. Dave, you're hearing a lot of conversation here. You're doing a lot of business with a lot of with the big tech companies. What are your customers talking about when it comes to virtual, and how would they react to this conversation?
They would be here nodding their heads. It's this is the same topics, everywhere, and everybody wants a wall now. Everybody thinks they're going to shoot against it. Everybody thinks it's going to be cool, and then you get to all the stuff this group is talking about, where it wasn't as easy as you thought it was. Unless you're just like going to take a picture and put it up there, and yeah, that kind of wasn't the point. And so, but the comment that Jay was making about plates is very real. That sometimes it's like, yeah, that would really be good enough. Let's not mess with the rest. But the stuff that the guys are doing,
the discussion
it helps.
Yeah, the discussion of Unreal versus plates, especially plates that most likely shot with a real camera. I think that's an extraordinary world for commercial productions, not for advertising. Advertising is eating it up, for them to recycle plates of putting a product in front of the Eiffel Tower. You don't have to go to Paris, and you can, and you can make a series of like 10 different commercials, and one that this is for Italy, and there it is in front of the Colosseum. And then this is for Paris in front of the Eiffel Tower. And then it is, here it is in front of Central Park. I think there's a tremendous sense of economics at play, that go way, way beyond the traditional media and entertainment that as we think of it, which is feature film or long form and episodic television. I think, in my opinion, the market is even much larger, in all these other verticals than it is in the traditional media and entertainment, and I think AJ and I had this conversation about car processing. Can you imagine, the entire world of putting a car on a set and putting it anywhere you want? It doesn't have to be necessarily Unreal. You can have these plates and they can be projected, and you can have the ceiling and you can have the sides, and and it would make a lot of sense. But now I'm going to turn this on its head a little bit, and I'm going to ask the group a question. Is, I would say, if you were to define one particular aspect of virtual production that you think has made the entire equation advance further, what would it be? Is it the quality of the LED tiles? Is it the incredible photorealism of Unreal rendering? Is it camera tracking? What is it, in your opinion, that I think has made the most tremendous leap, and the other area that still has to make that leap?
I'd like to maybe chime in here first, right? So again, I want to bring the filmmaker perspective a little bit. I know all you guys are filmmakers, but so for me, one of the hands down biggest differentiators here is that, for example, I no longer build like virtual sets, right? We build virtual buildings, right? Andrea and I just built a whole building, right, with 5, 6, 7, 8 locations in them, right? And this flexibility to just, basically rotate the world behind me into the right place and do that, that's just added so much speed, so much agility to the process. And plus one, all this talk about the cost savings, right? Less crew, less people, less lighting, less setup time, all of this stuff. And I think this agility, especially in corporate filmmaking, right, in industrial filmmaking, is something that didn't exist before. Period, right? I mean, I never had a visual effects budget in industrial filmmaking, but now I do, right? Because I have this ability to do this very, very rapidly. So that's a huge game changer for me, right? And I would argue that, I mean, we've done virtual sets for a really long time. I mean, just watch the evening news, right? I mean, this isn't new, right? But the ability to three-dimensionally move in it, whether I'm on a steady cam, I'm handheld, I'm on a dolly, I'm on a crane, right? So this plasticity of actually moving through a real physical space, you don't have that. And that's what that technology gives me too, the sense of being in an actual space. And I love that. I think that's the biggest game changer for me here.
Good, I love you. Yeah, that's such a very amazing answer, and shows kind of your understanding of how it kind of works. It's really excellent. I guess to answer the earlier question as well, it's that everything was already kind of there when we started, and now we're just seeing new iterations of it. But the technological leaps we're going to see in the next couple of years are, like, we're using camera tracking designed for broadcast. I had the first RX box, actually, the first Disguise RX box. I had my hands on that. I racked it. All of these things were made because we had to keep up with this new kind of way of doing things. We haven't even hit the version 1. People make fun of me because I'm always saying we're permanent beta. We haven't hit V1 of this thing yet. Like, it's going to be amazing. It already is, but think about how good it's going to be once we can catch up.
Yeah, I would liken this to the first version of digital cinema. When you look at the DCI spec when it first came out, the camera sensors were somewhere in the 1.2 range, 1.2K versus traditional film, which was equivalent on a color scale to roughly 4K. So it didn't look right. It didn't look that great when you first came up with this. But look at where we are at now with digital cinema, where we're going to be in 5 to 10 years with this stuff is really going to be blowing people's minds, because this is just the infancy of what's really happening here. And that goes right back to AJ. Well, he said, I'm in, I'm going.
Well, yeah, I would say, I mean, is there really any going back? I mean, I don't think so.
No, we've opened Pandora's box here, and this will absolutely change filmmaking. So when you look at the history, also you have something like, for example, when you went from tape to file, or you look at the generation of Spielberg in that group, they changed the way films were done. And I think that this new generation is going to embrace the new ability of possible and what's possible, and extend a story and bring it their own flavor to it. And it is going to change. This is a pivotal point.
Yeah.
How does it change the product, though, Eric? How does it revolutionize what the product is?
Okay, I'll show you another piece real quick. Let me share you one other thing. So we just shot this on a stage. I mean, this is all camera raw. We were moving raw at roughly 800 megabytes a second to AWS in this situation. And look at this. This is all staged. This is no VFX. I mean, this is all in camera stuff, that we're playing on. Obviously, this hasn't been color corrected or adjusted or anything, but we're able to just pull this off in a single shot, or in a couple of shots here.
It's amazing.
You couldn't do that before. I mean, the amount of work you've got there would have been
really levels
crazy.
The playing field for everybody. I mean, in the same way that when real-time rendering first hit the scene about 10 years ago, it kind of took the throne away from the big animation studios. Now it's happening with live action. Like, anybody is really enabled, with a minimal budget to do what the big guys are doing.
Yeah. I mean, I can scare you very, very deeply with horror stories, but I can also tell you I'm helping build a stage out in India right now. And I cannot wait to see what kind of crazy stuff comes out of Bollywood with this. Like, this is really exciting. This is a whole nother level of creativity it's just amazing.
Yeah, Michel, I wanted to ask you, I think that for a lot of people, there will be a question of, when do I go and sit on, rent somebody's stage, go on somebody's stage, and when do the people look at acquiring their own walls and tech? Where do you see the breakover?
Well, I think it's still too early to tell. But I think, just like Jay said, once we go to version 1.2, 1.3, version 2.0, then it's going to be democratized enough. There are going to be it's going to be standardized enough that it becomes a little less complicated to actually put a relatively affordable environment together. And then at that moment, it does make sense for a company who does not have the amount of capital to invest the large amount of money that is required to put together something substantial enough that it actually can hold. It can hold the road. You know, if you put something together, you know how fast, and Jay will tell you, it says, you know what, don't call me. You know, and you know that's clear. It says either you do it right, or you don't do it right. At the moment, doing it right, you know, it's still limited to a number of organizations who do have, you know, the amount of capital to invest. But I think it's going to democratize itself, you know. And I think I want to give a the first time I actually looked at this guys in more detail with Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn. She's in the audience. You know, and I was like, okay, this is a very, very, very small environment. It's in an office, and they want to be able to put their presenters anywhere in the world. And then I was introduced to set extensions, and I was like, holy shit, set extensions. You know, that's it. And that solution, you know, came to life, you know, and they have, you know, a small LED volume in an office building. Yes, the lighting is not Hollywood lighting. You don't have a DP shooting it. And you know, and it's a sort of traditional type of camera, but it can expand. You know, they can do a medium wide shot, and they have this person in context in the environment that they want to be in. So I think there's something to be said, you know, for that aspect of flexibility in the creative process that says, okay, you know, I really have no limits regardless of what my content is. You know, if it's not award-winning content, if it's just corporate. You know, if it's just like I said before, house of worship, if it's a commercial advertising spot, you know, it will make sense. It will make sense. And as soon as we get to that point where affordability, attainability, you know, has reached a point of aspirational, you know, and then I think we're pretty much there for virtual production for the masses.
You know, during the introduction, though, sort of playing off of Dave's question to you, Michel, and I'll bring AJ in. AJ, you mentioned early on that in this conversation that you know, it was good having the leverage of some good retailing power to get the manufacturers to adapt what they needed to do, and I think you alluded to that early on. And you can go branded if you want, or you can go general. I'll leave that to you. But what do you need from the manufacturers? And how can the group sort of get its head together about putting a little bit of communications here to tell the manufacturers what this group needs to achieve what you know is possible? So what were you referring to there?
Well, you know, it takes so many very expensive things to even just try this, right? So being able to have someone like Planar who says, here's a 30-foot by 10-foot curved LED wall, have fun, you know, or Michel who's sending me lenses and, you know, basically whatever equipment I asked for, I got. And, you know, we had it on sort of a short-term loan, and we're figuring it out, and we're going, well, this works good, and that doesn't necessarily work as well. And hey, what if you guys, you know, did you consider this? Or, you know, we'd actually get to have FaceTime with some of those manufacturers. I know I'd sent some questions to Michel to go back to Evertz about Genlock, and hey, you know, is it possible to do this? And you know, that kind of open collaboration with the brands is really is really necessary at this point, you know, and especially as we were starting out as a company. And I will say that the people that really seem to have the guts right now to sort of go full force into this with their own productions and their own budgets seems to be like commercials. And so what we've been doing is really trying to hold their hand and go, listen, you don't have to understand this. We're happy to walk you through it. We'll be there the entire time. You know, please let us help you so that the content actually works when we get it. But please let us be a part of, you know, this conversation along the way. And it reminds me of the conversations that we had with Michel and Planar and even Disguise when we first got started. So definitely those kind of collaborations between all of us and between the brands and everything, I think they're huge, really huge right now.
I think that he makes a really important point here, is that what we've seen is someone's first shoot to their second shoot is radically different. Let somebody hold your hand for the first one. Especially hold your DP's hand, because I've run into the same problem. Like the DP's panicking the first day because they're like, and trying to mitigate the lighting to the wall and all this other stuff. And you're like, no, relax, calm down, listen to us, let us help you here. But yeah, seeing the kind of product that is coming out of people on their second shoot. So don't invest in a wall yet, just invest in time with experts. Get a feel for it first, then move forward.
Interesting. I got to I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to just add something here, right? So I mean, obviously I'm part of a for large cloud company, right? And we're obviously super deeply vested into wanting to be part of all of this here, right? But I'm going to remain in my filmmaker persona, right? But I'm going to rotate my head over for a second to technologist, right? So if there's one thing I could encourage us as an industry, right, to think about is like, so now we've innovated all this really fantastic stuff, right? And we bring the cost point down on all this stuff where even a filmmaker like I can afford it, which is terrific. But we're missing a lot of kind of like standardization in it, right? I mean, today, every environment I go into is different, right? Every volume operates different. Every tracking system operates different, right? There's some commonality here, of course, right? But as a DP, which is what I act as most of the time, right? One dream that I have is like a unified repository of lens files, lens calibration files. You have no idea how many times we're calibrating and recalibrating and recalibrating lenses, right? So I think there's lots of opportunities for us to say here, I mean, what are these calibration standards that will make it easy and fast for a filmmaker to go into a volume and be operational, right? Or go into a stage and be operational. And for me, as an industrial filmmaker, it's also very important that I can go around the world to do these things. I cannot always expect all my talent to come to me. So if I need to go to India, for example, Jay, right, I want to walk into a volume that I have a certain set of technical familiarity with. And today that doesn't exist, right? Because everybody is different, it operates different. Sometimes it runs on different software platforms and so forth. So to me, that's a call to action to us as an industry to say, what are the hooks to drive these linearities and these standards into the environment? Thanks, Martin. Thanks for letting me plug that in.
And now I got a question from the audience that's sort of a play off of this whole issue of technology. So I'll just read it. Would a super high resolution camera make this more difficult, like 8K or 12K, or does 4K and 6K hide what shouldn't be seen while it would be seen with a higher resolution?
You don't need it. Yeah, I mean, of course, it would make it more difficult. Every pixel has a compute resource attached to it. So the more you add on, the worse. But honestly, you know, the guys that make the content like AJ and Jay here and Kurd, they'll tell you don't need the 4K and the 8K.
Yeah. The resolution question is, you know, an answer. It's a mathematical problem, especially like Moray, right? Like these are not hard questions to answer. I can. For instance, talking about lens files, right? I actually have a repository of lens files because I'm trying to get published out, and also color configurations, right? Because essentially we are on very static targets that there's no way we shouldn't be able to just matrix these things together. But yeah, sorry, I just lost the train of thought. What was I even talking about? Eric's laughing at me because I do that sometimes.
Resolution.
You're going to need a camera that's synced up to everything. You're going to have to create a situation in which your camera's either gen locked or something else to your screen.
You don't have to gen lock your camera. I'm sorry, I have to say it. You don't have to. In some cases, we shot that Soderbergh film on Genlock. It helps solving a very specific problem a lot easier. And if you want to do like things like set extension, really high synchronization, you have to. But things like Genlock, Moray, all these like boogeymen that everyone walks, you can always tell a DP the first time that he's ever been on stage. It's like, what about the Moray? And you're like, well, just kick the lens back a little bit. I don't know, like. It's not that hard. Like, these are all issues, but we really have harder issues on the education and creative ends. The mathematical ones are easy.
their math.
Yeah, one of the things I would say about the cameras, we just shot a project, the shipment that Michel was going to show something from, which we shot for Sony using the new Venice 2, which is 8K, and it didn't really present new problems, but the thing that I really like about the Venice is the sensor itself, and I think that's where we can get the camera companies to make the most difference in this space, because as you all know, and Jay probably cringes every other day, every sensor sees that color differently, and they're rounding it off to a different color. And I was lucky enough to be somewhat helpful to Star Trek Discovery when they started their virtual production. The DP was a friend of mine, and he called me and he said, I don't understand what the guy's telling me, the virtual production supervisor. I don't understand why he's saying I don't need lights. And I'm like, no, you need lights.
Oh God,
like, you put the light in the wall and that's all you need. And it's like, no, you need lights. He's like, yeah, it seems weird because when my actors walk in wearing yellow uniforms on the camera, they're orange. It's like, yeah, exactly. So let's get working on that color science, and especially with the camera sensors. Like,
yeah, and Tim Kang had a great presentation about that at HPA, right? Like the lighting guys are figuring this out, and it's an evolving science.
Yeah,
that work actually comes out of the working group that I run. Is Tim and Paul Debevic set up that experiment, and we executed it.
Yeah, that experiment was terrific. I just want to say one word about the camera resolution. I don't think this is an issue to actually be too concerned about. I think there's always a way, to, just like Jay said, to work the math in a way that's to your advantage, regardless of the lensing and the cameras that you're using. There are going to be projects whose requirement is going to be to deliver at 4K and 8K, and it's going to have to be worked on anyway. But just AJ just said it. He had a Venice 2, and it didn't present new problems. I think what's more critical is color management, color rendition, is lighting. It's color space. It's everything that is integral to how the sensor is going to receive that image and what kind of image it's receiving. And it is properly formatted from the color management standpoint before it hits the sensor. I think is more important than the resolution.
Well said, Michel.
Yeah, eventually this is just going to become production, and everybody's just going to be able to shoot the way that they would normally shoot, because all these things are going to get worked out thanks to people like you guys.
Yeah, and you have to have a strong technical vision. It's really, really important. And so, there's a lot of different myths about this right now that you have to kind of parse through. For instance, you have to know what you're asking for. Disguise, he can't really probably promote as much as I can. Disguise is an incredibly powerful package that does a lot of things that are incredibly hard and that I can do manually by using things like Touch Designer, texture sharing, and all this other stuff. You can also just get Disguise. There are limitations, of course, right? You have to know what you're actually looking for, and you don't go expecting the entire world. You still have to have some kind of knowledge and expectation.
Yeah, for most studios that have, giant sort of engineering and dev teams, like, if you're talking the Disneys of the world, they don't really need to have a complete system like Disguise. But for the rest of us, like, we don't have those resources, right? We just need something out of the box that just works. And that's where it comes in.
I think I'll just do a bit of a round robin, lightning round with you guys if we can. Let's use NAB as sort of the excuse. I don't know if everybody's going, but let's assume you're going. And if you're going, are you looking for or hearing about anything that's could be of interest to this community from virtual production standpoint? What companies should everybody be visiting? And is there anything there that you could consider to be a game changer? I don't know. So, Kurt, are you going to the show? And if so, what are you looking for? And if you're not, what do you dream about at night?
Well, I was totally going, but unfortunately, Andrew, my producer, put me into Italy the same week for a production we're doing. But if I were to be going, right, I would definitely want to very much look for, what are kind of like the new trends, not just on the walls, but also on the tracking technology. So I can continue making a lot of dynamic moves in front of the wall and so forth, right? And I would really want to look for what are some of these key indicators for me, right? And around basically what we just talked about. I mean, how much are the camera folks talking about this, right? I mean, how much are they considering, anticipating, what's Ari doing, what's Red doing, what's Sony doing, specifically to embracing some elements in the technology that are still difficult to solve, right? Where the cameras are not super supportive. That'd be my call out for you. Go check out the cameras, go check out the tracking technologies.
All right, well, and we'll let you know what we saw right afterwards, Kurt.
Yeah.
Jay, you're up next. What are you going to be looking for, and what kind of conversations do you expect to have at the show?
Oh man, I mean, Kurt actually stole mine. It's really tracking methodologies. The new versions of these are coming out. It's not just inside out, outside in anymore. We're crazy stuff with sonics, RF, like entire technologies that are kind of being created, not to mention the in-camera stuff. What I'm looking forward to most is the small companies. Everyone's come up with a great idea in the last year and a half and developed it. And at some point you just can't hear it all online. You have to see it. And that's what I'm really looking forward to, is just hearing the next brilliant thing that's going to save our lives on set.
All right. Erik, I know you're not very busy at the show. You're sitting in the bar the whole time, entertaining.
All the best business is done in the bar, Marty.
That's what. But you know what? It's true. But when you're not in the bar and you might stumble onto the show floor, what do you think you're gonna see from in virtual production?
So, unlike a lot of folks, I'm running around to these different facilities every single day. So like, for example, I was over at Brompton today, looking at multi-frustrum, when you see it in action, it's really cool, especially like he brought it up to 144 Hertz and you didn't get the color. You weren't getting the strobing like a Wang Chung video anymore at that speed. But some of the stuff from Moses I think is interesting. If they pull a lot of it off, some of the stuff is pretty cool there. Just staying on the edge of just making sure to hear what's going on and what's happening with the great people like Carolyn here, who's on this call.
Boy, Carolyn's getting a lot of
love here. So you gotta be around these great folks.
Hey, you know what?
So they give you an intro to all the latest stuff immediately. So,
well, Addy, you know what? So then we'll pass the baton to you.
Sure.
What's going on with Disguise of the show, and what again? Putting on your shopping hat.
Yeah,
what are you buying?
I want to visit everybody in the industry. It's a small industry, so I want to go to Row, I want to go to Planar, I want to go to Moses, I want to go everywhere and just talk to my colleagues and my peers. The more we work together, the more open we are. We've developed standards together. I mean, that's where the magic will come from. On the technical side, I think digital assets is still a big missing component. So Epic has, the Unreal Marketplace, which is good enough for most things, but it's still not photoreal enough for, real production use. Like, is there a smaller studio that's just building photoreal assets and LiDAR scans? Or what is the marketplace for high quality plates? And so if these companies are coming out and showing their stuff at NAB, I would be super stoked about that.
Great. And AJ?
Well, I'm going to be with Erik at the bar. So actually, we're going to host a cocktail reception. So you guys are all invited to that. I would say, I'm interested in seeing all the new stuff, like Jay said, from some of the smaller places. I will say this, definitely check out OptiTrack, some of the stuff that they've been doing lately. That video that I showed where we were tracking Trinity, that's like impossible. And the only reason it is because we were using their new puck, which is really nice. So,
really cool.
Yeah, check it out.
And Michel, you're not going to be too busy at that show. I know you don't have anything going on. So, but when but if you get a moment, what are you going to be away from your own booth? What are you going to be checking out?
I'm only going to hit one place at NAB. It's going to be my party on Monday night. Everything else I have no interest in doing.
Well, wait a minute. You know what?
Registered.
You're gonna have to put the invitation in the chat, man, or spread the word.
Yeah,
you know what?
Get yourself invited. You know, start buying some stuff from B&H, or you're not getting invited. There you go.
And I'll bring you back in here as well. Thank Dave Van Hoy. Anything we should keep an eye out for at the show? Dave, you there?
I'm there. Had to get to mute land. The this show is going to be interesting. You know, I think people are going to be as interested in seeing each other as they are any of the tech. But I think this time around, there's going to be tremendous interest in this topic. Literally, I mean, I think every video wall manufacturer is going to be talking about it. Every camera manufacturer is going to be talking about it. And most of them are going to forget to talk about the important part, like Addy has, which is what really makes it go.
So I do want to make one other comment. I'll have a bunch of papers coming out for folks here coming up soon on things like sound mitigation in a volume, metadata through and through all your different key systems. Virtual beings will be doing talks at NAB about the state of the art in virtual beings. So there's a lot of stuff that will be rolling around the corner in the next 2 months.
Good. Well, I've learned a lot, and I think I thank you guys. This has been a great conversation. I'll tell you two things I've learned. There was a commonality among all you guys. You guys like a challenge. You're not, none of you are trying to come up with an easy deal, right? This is, so that's one thing I've heard repeatedly, which is you love to be told you can't do it, or you go do it. So there's certainly the personality type that this crazy virtual production is attracted to. So that's one thing I'm hearing. The second thing, though, is we should get back together in 5 years and see where it is. So 5 years from now, we're going to have this whole same Zoom boxes, guys. You're going to be in the left. I'm going to be in the right. We're going to all look really old. But 5 years from now, we're going to do the same. We're going to have the same meeting, and we're going to see what you guys have to say, right? And will it be in Zoom, or will it be in the virtual background? It would be a lot better than the one I have going, or the one that Erik has going. So we'll see what we do 5 years from now. Any final words, Michel? Anybody else have any final words?
I'd like to
let everybody go home for the night.
Before we go home, I just want to throw out one thing and really thank Michel, who pulled this all together. It's fun to be the attendee. And Michel, I just think you rocked it tonight. What a great group, and I'm really grateful.
And I'll add, thank you to Erik Weaver also. He had a thing or two to bring in.
Marty and Erik and AJ and Jay and Kurt and Addy. It's a privilege to count you as my friend. Thank you very much.
And wait, we got to add Carolyn. We got to add her in.
We got to add Carolyn.
Hey, Carolyn.
He's listening.
All right.
You've heard it here. In 5 years, I guarantee you this will be blowing up. I was on the stage talking about how cloud would blow up 8 or 9 years ago. And I'm telling you, you heard it here.
All right. Well, you're going to be in that 5 years. You're going to be in that same box, Erik. Hopefully you'll be in a different apartment, but whatever.
Hey, to me, in 5 years from now, what I'd like to test us on is, do we have wall fatigue? Right? or do we or have we found really the awesome ways of continuing telling fantastic stories in this new medium, or are we fatigued with it? That's what I want to test.
Everybody wants to go shoot in the real world is the reaction.
Listen, guys, this has been a great conversation. I thank you all. We should be doing this. Let's keep doing it. If you have any ideas, send them my way. Keep in touch, and just keep making these beautiful movies, everybody. We love seeing them. Change the world. Thank you. See you at NAB.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.